Hello, everyone. My name is Rosemary Savino. I lead operations at Vanadium. We are a data technology platform that's leveraging innovative technology to give people and companies control of their data. And I'm joined today by Jeff Phelan from H20 AI. Thanks for joining me here, Jeff. How
It's
you
a
doing
pleasure.
today?
It's great.
Awesome.
It's been a good show.
Tell me a little bit about your role at H20 AI, and then I'm going to ask you a whole bunch of questions.
Sure. So I'm the public sector growth lead for H20 AI. So primarily responsible for our go-to-market and sales and marketing activities here and positioning and messaging to the federal government.
Awesome. So we're going to talk about AI today. Obviously, it's in
Right.
your name. So tell me, from your perspective, what is the current state of AI and AI, ML, generative, however
Sure.
you want to address that?
Well, I think it's now gone from the high-tech crowd to it's being discussed at kitchen tables now, right? It's sort of everywhere. And I think specifically here with the government, there's a very high level of interest in it. I think there is a cautious enthusiasm. And so organizations are in a variety of sort of, let's say, due diligence phases, trying to get comfortable with the technology and then all of the surrounding issues of deploying something like this within their operation.
So where do you see the market heading generally, in the medium to short term?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's going to be going up, and it's going to be going up for a while. I think that we do quite a bit of work in the regulated industry, so a lot of the banks, big publicly traded companies are using a lot of these capabilities already. So I think that gives the government the ability to sort of see where lessons learned are and how they can improve upon, and also utilize a lot of really, really good capabilities that they don't have to build from the ground up. So I think we're going to see a very deliberate pace. I don't think we're going to see a giant hockey stick that they might like to see in Silicon Valley, but I think there'll be a very gradual uptick, and it's actually really exciting to see what's happening right now.
So I think a lot of people forget that the term artificial intelligence and ML or machine learning is actually not a new term.
That's
It's more
correct.
about the generative aspects
Sure.
of AI. Can you talk a little bit about the generative tools, how they might be risky at this stage, and how potentially cybersecurity tools can help mitigate some of the risk, especially in the public sector?
Sure, certainly. So the large language models and the generative AI component are of very high interest across almost every agency and customer we talk to right now. So I think the ability to deploy these tools within their operations really are legitimately transformative, and we've seen that happen. So I think the largest issue that all of our customers that we talk to is around data security. And the fact that you, with a lot of these capabilities, they feel like you need to go to the cloud to do this work, and that means their data is going to leave their security boundaries, which creates a lot of problems. And this is candidly an area that we've really excelled at because we've been working with a lot of the major banks and in regulated industries where they cannot let their data be outside of their environments. It's all proprietary and it's personal information and financial information. One of the things that we do is we air gap, or we keep all of those capabilities on site. And so that mitigates all of these security concerns, a lot of the security concerns that may be introduced, for example, if this is hosted in a hyperscaler or in a cloud. So the fact that we can bring those capabilities into an air-gapped, protected, secure environment fundamentally changes how they can consider deploying these now, the use cases. And so you have to be able to get through those security gates and handle the data sovereignty concerns before you can really dig in and start looking at use cases. And with the White House directive and OMB, a lot of organizations have just said absolutely no, partly because there's an assumption that the generative AI capabilities have to go out to the cloud. That's just not the case. So there's an educational piece here to help them understand the art of the possible, and you can be very secure and take advantage of it, and you don't have to trade off.
So do you find that there are new, whether they're cyber or air gapping or even human tools that are required to not just increase the overall knowledge of this, but also to increase the overall security of these new tools from your perspective?
Yeah, I think that organizations that are starting to move out, and we recommend this, there's always a human in the loop. And I think the flexibility is really figuring out what's the right point for the human in the loop interaction, right? There are certain things that you're absolutely going to want to automate, and you don't need to have an expert or a SME or a security professional operate. But certainly within the workflow, particularly if you're going to get into mitigation strategies and start turning things off and other sort of denial, people can't get access to certain systems, that creates problems. So I think you always want to be deliberate about that and understand, and that's how you build trust, candidly. And invariably what will happen over time is, as the humans begin to interact at this phase, they will build trust, or they'll put other mechanisms in place so that they can continue to benefit from the automation, which is really important.
So we're really talking about responsible AI in the context of its usage, certainly in the public sector, but also in the private sector. Can you talk a little bit more about responsible AI?
Yeah, so with regards to responsible AI, you really need to be able to make sure that when this system's making a recommendation or a decision, that the math is explainable to someone who's not a PhD in mathematics. Right? And so this is part of the challenge, because historically it's really been about the math and mathematicians, really, really smart people, but most people don't have that level of skill to really understand it. And this is an area we really feel we're a leader in, because we do a lot of work with the banks, and they have to make sure for regulatory purposes that they are not biasing against demographics, and that when they make a risk or a credit or a loan decision, that it can be repeated, it's fully auditable, and they have documentation. And so one of the things that we do within our system is we have an auto documentation capability. So when you decide that you're going to deploy a model, we literally generate an 80-page document that walks through all of the information in plain English with the math there, so that both a statistical or mathematical professional, as well as someone who's on the policy or the management side, they can look at that and they can agree and understand as to what they're doing. And that's a really important bridge that, candidly, we see all the time. The data scientists speak one language, and then you have management and other roles that don't speak that language, and you've got to be able to bridge it.
Well, that's fantastic. So your compliance officer, your risk management officer, and your data science officer can all speak from the same set of truthful data
100%.
to move the organization forward. Are there other tools that organizations should be looking at to help with
I think
that?
having third-party validation and really an empirical analysis. One of the things that we try to introduce is we have a whole bunch of evaluation tools that will allow you to measure against those dimensions that are important to you, whether it's bias or accuracy or hallucination, how much it costs, how long it takes, all of those types of things. And so there's never going to be a one-size-fits-all. So I think having the ability to test those models, empirically understand them side by side across these sort of industry standard best practice metrics is really helpful. So particularly when you start introducing this, there's always going to be a new large language model or a new capability that's going to be introduced, and you really need to be able to say, hey, we've run this against a test set or a test bed, and we have models and leaderboards we've built. And someone may come in with really good intentions to recommend something, not understanding all of the underlying sort of the foundational issues as to why you've deployed it. And so now we've got those tools built into platforms so you can do that. So, vendors want to sell you their thing, but you've got to be able to justify why you deployed this particular one in that particular case. And again, it's all of that, statistical, mathematical, and the explanations that are there readily available. And I think that white box, not black boxed anymore, it's got to be very transparent to be responsible, candidly. It's got to be understood by someone who can read that document and say, oh, I can understand this. They may not know the solution to the math problem, but they can understand why you've reached the decision you have.
What a great perspective on kind of where we are today with some of this. Thank you for speaking with us about it. Now here's my question to you. What's your number one takeaway from this year's conference?
Well, I think some of the topics we talked about today, I think security is paramount with everyone. And there is a very, very high level of interest and I think a lot of enthusiasm to take advantage of the technologies that are available and they're coming out. They want to apply them to some of these difficult, you hear about burden reduction. How do we help just automate a lot of this clerical work, this pick and shovel work that just are bogging really talented, expensive people from really, I think, helping to scale their mission. And so I think helping them understand the art of the possible and what you can do securely, and that's baked into the platform is really a big hurdle that most folks are really trying to get their arms around. I think a lot of folks are playing around with ChatGPT and other things where they're really excited, but if they can't address the governance and the security issues, it's a blocker for them. And so I think that's what a lot of folks are trying to really work through here at the show.
Gotcha. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jeff. It was great talking to you.
My pleasure. Thank you very much.